So this video is about the sketchbook cycle. So it's designed to support students so they understand the correct order to put their sketchbooks together and to understand the cycle that they take throughout their project. So this image here is, I've designed this and it's very much based on the cycle, and it is an ongoing cycle when you're doing your art projects. So you start with your mind maps and then you start to do your mood boards, you research artists and you create contact sheets in response to that. So it's an ongoing cycle, and the assessment criteria is very holistic as well, so that kind of feeds into each other. So this is a general guide of the cycle, but I want to take you through each stage. So the first stage is the mind map. So what's your chosen theme, concept or idea? And it's totally up to you how you want to present it. You can do it using software if you want to, a mind map software. This is Go Conquer, or you can just do it by hand, but make the sketchbook yours and make your first pages really creative so that you feel fully engaged with your project, and immediately your book will be bursting with energy and ideas. And remember, this is a springboard for ideas, so if you start to run out of ideas, you can go back to this later on in your project to see if there's any ideas that you've overlooked. Then the next is mood boards, and that's about finding engaging and inspiring images that relate to your chosen theme, concept and idea. So obviously Pinterest is a fantastic place to locate inspiring photos or images, but also make sure you put in some key artists within your mood boards too. So you've got a mixture of different images, and it doesn't have to just be photographer's work. You can be inspired by filmmakers, you can be inspired by music, all sorts. So make sure your selection is quite broad, but it does relate to your theme. And here's one example here, but again, you can make it as creative as you want. You can combine more images and you can start to add text as well. So, be open to making these sketchbooks yours, so that you have your own sort of creative license. The next is your artist research. So think about finding a relevant research artist. Now this is the key word here, and you can be inspired by artists visually or technically or even conceptually. So there's always ways of drawing inspiration from other people's work. And here I encourage my students to do their artist research in quite a methodical way, so it's very clear and concise. So we get a nice strong quote about the photographer's work. It can either be from the photographer or it can be about their work or from an exhibition that they've shown their work, and then sort of a brief little intro, contextualizing the work, really a little bit about the artist, and then I ask the students to image deconstruct in a key work by that artist, and then everything's clearly marked up. And you can see that they've done a bit of research on the content, the form, process. Here's your evidence of understanding camera techniques and the mood as well, and their inspiration, where they've been inspired, and then how this work has inspired you and how it will connect to your new shoot. Now this is really key as well. Plan of shoot. It's all about really making your intentions clear. And also it helps you formalise a plan for what you want to do in your shoot. There's nothing worse than picking up a camera and not really knowing what you plan to do. So if you've got something in mind, then you'll feel more confident and equipped with and prepared to take a good shoot. So this is what I recommend for my students. I asked them to sort of do a plan of shoot across 2 pages, so it's quite in depth. So they start to think about relevant camera techniques and how they can apply that to their work, and also experimentation, both in front of the camera through, say, the model or whatever you're photographing, through lighting, And also in the camera, thinking about the framing, thinking about the camera settings, angle, vantage points, and then also post-production. What do you hope to do with the images after, whether it's in Photoshop or by hand? And then going back to your inspiration, find key images that you find really inspiring. And it doesn't just need to be photographers and artists. You can be inspired by films, music videos, music, books, wherever you draw your inspiration from. But make sure you show that in your plan of shoot. And then think about the subject matter, the location, and what time of the day. And how will that affect your images? And make sure that you are always bearing in mind, if you're using a studio, show you're going to use a studio. If you're going to use a tripod, you're going to need to set your camera to the self timer. So plan all these things. Then for the next page for the planner shoot, I encourage the students to think about contextualizing their work. Think about relevant articles or statistics or interviews that can support their project, their concept. And another key thing is visualizing your plan of shoot. So just create some little thumbnail sketches, very much like a director would do as a storyboard. So once you've got those in mind, then you can start to visualize your new shoot. And the more sketches in your sketchbook as well, I think it just really helps to communicate your ideas. So once you've done that, then I'd like my students to select 32 strong images from their shoot. And again, I actually encourage them to put a couple in there that may not be as strong, but then they can actually, annotate how they would improve the picture. And that again emphasizes their understanding. It's more evidence of them understanding key photographic terminology as well, and recognizing which images are more successful than others. So when you're annotating and thinking about your images, you need to think about, making sure that you highlight which ones are successful and which ones aren't. Think about emphasizing the camera settings as well. So what was the depth of field? What was your shutter speed like? And then always refer back to the formal elements and the visual elements too. And think about the lighting. Was the exposure good? Was it underexposed or was it overexposed? And always try to annotate that so it's clear that you understand these terms. And then here I've created this contact sheet key, which I encourage the students to use as well. So it's a nice simple key where they can add these symbols alongside their contact sheets, and then it can emphasize, which images they would like to crop. And of course I want them to draw on their contact sheets as well. So here, my ex-student Rao here, she sketched here, and then she's shown the symbol here for the crop tool. And here she said that this is a good balanced composition. So we've got the symbol for the rule of thirds. She's given this a tick. She was happy with this image. This one, she's decided she wasn't going to pick this image. So, but you can still write more, you can draw more. There should be an energy in your contact sheets where you've really connected and engaged with your images. Then it's your contact sheet evaluation. So this is a good chance to think about reviewing and refining your images. So this is where you clarify what was the aim of your shoot. What were the positives? What worked really well? And what techniques did you use? And make sure that you've got the evidence here of your camera settings, the lens that you used. Here you've got the f-stop, so the aperture f8, and the shutter speed here is at 125th. So always think about including that detail. Don't overlook it, and remember there'll be an external moderator that will assess your work. So they won't have the pleasure of meeting you as a student, so they need to see all the evidence of your understanding here in the sketchbook. And then think about, how do you want to move on? It's all about progress. How do you move on to your next shoot? And then another detail we like to do is the technical data. And this is where I encourage students to do a very simple sketch here, very crude little sketch, but it shows the setup of the studio, where the lights were, and an image of the camera, or you can or the back of the camera, and again the settings that we use overall for the photo shoot too. Then, exactly the same idea of researching the artists, I encourage students to create an image deconstruction of one of their key images. So here, this student here, Valentina, she's created an image deconstruction of her image here. She's shown her inspiration, her links to Michael Wolff's work, and then she's taken each point, the form, process, mood, communication, all of this, and then base this around her image. So it's very clearly deconstructing her own images. And then it's important to show as well what you're doing. So if you're using Photoshop, show the before and afters in the edits alongside each other. So Valentina's done this here. You can, in Camera Raw, you can also press this button and you can have the before and after alongside each other. She's just got the one here, but she's added the raw file. So you can see there's been quite a lot of editing that she's done here. She's really lifted the exposure to bring out the highlights and the surface of the water too. And she's also linked Michael Wolff again here. She's made it clear what her camera settings were, and by doing this screenshot of the Camera Raw, it shows all the adjustments she's made in the exposure, contrast and highlights and shadows. So that's a simple way just to show your edits rather than having to write lots of information. And then the next stage is the development of ideas. So thinking about how you can push that idea further. And this is some of Valentina's experimentations with some of her images, with weaving, hand collages, tearing collages. So that should naturally come, and then that leads you into your next shoot. So the sketchbook cycle is very much like this. So you create your, so then you move on to your research artist. And then I encourage the students also to do it, to pick a technique artist so they can apply that to their work, and then they create their contact sheets and they evaluate those, and then they start to edit those images, and then they edit it in Photoshop or post-production by hand, and then it's about the development of the idea. And this cycle just carries on evolving this way. Okay, so round and round it goes, and then eventually, there's no exact number, but I like my students to do at least 8 photo shoots following this cycle, so there's real evidence of progression and sustaining a focused project. And then as they get towards their final outcomes, then they create their development of work, and then they produce their final outcomes, and then they do an overall evaluation. And if they're doing the A level and it's component 1, they also write their essay, which is like a personal log of their journey taken through the whole project. So that's how I design my projects with my students, and they follow this sketchbook cycle, but it's very much up to them how they want to present their books, as long as the content is there and the order is methodical and clear for the assessment objectives to be met, and also for the external moderator to assess the work.